You're listening to Second Cut. This is the independent film podcast from Second Cut, where we talk about topics in film theory, history, criticism, and whatever else strikes our fancy. I'm Jacob, and I'm the one who just looks more Texas as far as you're concerned.
I'm Sam. I'm the one who's going to be smoking a pipe during this episode to look intellectual and gentlemanly.
I'm Kieran. I'm the one that wants to put in something about I like trains without getting sued. But I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, we already run on a deficit. We don't need to be getting sued. We're paid in steel washers. Anyway.
If you're lucky.
So the film Thunderbolts came out last week? I don't know when it came out.
Yeah,
Apparently.
on Thursday.
Well, I'm not going to say how it is because we'll tell you to go read Sam's review so you can find out. But, you know, we like to stay super relevant here at Second Cut. So we're talking about villains teaming up.
Yeah, it's a sort of a little bit of a tenuous link, but we're going with it anyway.
Yeah, I like the fact we thought of villains teaming up, and we didn't go for like obvious ones like Suicide Squad and that kind of thing. We just went for what's just a film where the main characters are some bad guys, and it's almost from the bad guy's point of view, and there's several of them.
Well, here's the thing. Good guys like to team up. So, I mean, it's only natural that you're going to have some villains getting groups together. I mean, that's how you end up with, like, what's the anti-Justice League? I forget their name. The bad guys.
What, the Suicide Squad for...
No, they have like a lake-based layer and...
Oh, sorry, the League of Doom. League of Doom.
Yes, the League of Doom. You gotta be able to match their power whenever good guys are coming together to create a super force to defeat any bad guy in existence.
Indeed.
Yeah, and that was the whole premise of the Sinister Six movie that never got off the ground over at Sony. You know, that's why they spent so long flogging all these side characters and minor Spider-Man films that no one cared about to do a big team up, and that's not happening either now. So.
And what the hell Universal were going to do after The Mummy, I don't know. Sorry, The Mummy / Jekyll and Hyde, because they put that in right away.
Yeah. I mean, they just had Jekyll in to be their Nick Fury, basically, didn't they? He was going to turn up at the end of each of those films and say, "I'm here to talk to you about gods and monsters."
Now, aside from stopping the Justice League, the only other reason I think bad guys team up is to do heists. Have we discovered any other reasons?
I mean, I was kind of thinking in terms of like the crossover kind of bad guy stuff. The earliest one I'm thinking of is something like Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, which we have covered many, many years ago, and kind of the monster rallies and that kind of thing. Because, I mean, until really Marvel and DC kind of doing these big kind of interlocking universes, you kind of
don't forget about Godzilla.
Oh, okay, yeah. Actually, you know what? I will give a shout out for Godzilla. Something like Ghidorah and Destroy All Monsters and stuff like that. But aside from kind of that, really, you need kind of many movie installments and a long enough running franchise to actually have the characters big enough to come together, and you kind of can't do that until you've got these major blockbuster franchises. I mean, it'd be interesting to see like all the kind of Bond villain comes together to do something, but then again, that's just called Spectre, but they're all dead by the end of it when they get there, so how do you resurrect them back?
There's also Disney's Descendants, which, I mean, obviously massive franchise, but often the bad characters are teaming up to try and stop, I don't know, the school beast's son, something like that.
What the hell's Descendants?
It's where the children of the main Disney characters go to magic school together, or live on an evil island.
Like who? Sorry, I've never heard of this. This is in...
So you have the children of, was it Maleficent, Ursula, Captain Hook for some reason.
Jafar,
Yeah.
Cruella.
Yeah, I've only ever seen the first one. That was bad enough. No, I've seen supercuts of the second that probably looks like more fun because it's just more camp.
It is. There's more pirates in that one.
This feels like one of the late 90s, early 2000s Scooby-Doo movies that they used to show, like on Boomerang.
It's not far off that. I mean, it's a Disney Channel movie, so the budget's nearly non-existent. I mean,
yes.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm thinking of something. Did you guys ever watch? It's from '88. Flipping heck, that's old. It's older than I realized. Scooby-Doo and the Ghoul School was one of the movies where Shaggy, Scooby, and Scrappy get enlisted as a school essentially for the children of monsters. So there's like Dracula's daughter, Frankenstein's daughter, Mummy's daughter, and then they have to do kind of the fight almost. Is it a football game or something, or a tennis, something like that, against the boys' school next door, which are completely normal and not monsters and stuff like that. That's the nearest I can think of for this kind of connection.
It's a lot like that.
Okay, this is much better.
I don't understand. They have like a lacrosse team. I don't know who they're playing in lacrosse games. I guess just normal schools.
Can I ask who the hell Is this just an American thing now? Because the Brits don't really play lacrosse, I think, unless your dad earns about 150 million a year. Really?
Yeah, they probably do at Eton, don't they? But
yeah, and that's like going. Yes, we're going to play in the croquet team.
Well, the Eton school has their own fun game, which we don't have time to get into, but it's awesome.
It's crashing stock markets and
stuff
like that,
destroying the nation. Okay. Do we have any other general villain team-up talk before we just talk about the movies, which are all from the 60s and 70s?
I was going to say, we've gone for classics and we've gone for absolute bangers as well.
Yeah,
we've got quality movies.
And we've gone for a very specific time and place in the film industries of the States and the UK, haven't we? Yeah.
Yes.
But no, in general, I think something like this, just bringing all kind of morally flexible, interesting characters together to kind of work reluctantly to achieve a goal, which is usually, to get revenge or get rich or a bit of both. Is kind of is the way to do it, rather than, I mean, the worst thing you can do with your villain, if you've got a compelling villain against your hero in the first film, is to bring them back and make them a good guy for the second time round, or the worst thing of all, go back into their life and give them a tragic backstory to explain their villain.
James Cameron, Terminator.
Yeah.
And I'll also say for about a month and a half's time, Megan 2.0, which, let's be honest, is just Terminator remakes. That's all. That's all it is.
I finally saw the trailer for that the other week in cinema.
It's Terminator 2.
It's I was flabbergasted really what it actually was. It's like, wait, this is Megan, and what? It's a full sci-fi now. Okay, then, all right, let's go with it.
It's Terminator 2.
Yeah.
Nice.
A bit like Deadpool 2 was Terminator 2.
Yeah, a lot of sequels to Terminator 2, really.
Yeah, essentially, just make a bad guy a good guy, and everyone goes to T2 now. Anyway, yeah, I'm sure we'll come to various things about kind of villains and bad guys and morality as we go along. And Sam's got his pipe out. I do have a pipe somewhere because I have a Sherlock Holmes hat as well, but I don't know where it is. So unfortunately, I can't bring that out.
Ooh, so you probably got a fancy curved one then.
No, it's a plastic one because it was like $5.99 for a hat and magnifying glass that broke and a plastic pipe.
Perfect. All right, Sam, do you want to tell us about one of the most British movies I've ever watched?
Play it again, Sam.
Yeah, so League of Gentlemen is a 1960 film directed by Basil Dearden, based on John Bowen's 1958 novel, which I did not know existed until earlier today when I was reading about it. And it's a comedy crime thriller that follows Lieutenant Colonel Norman Hyde, played by Jack Hawkins, who recruits a team of disgraced ex-soldiers, played by the likes of Nigel Patrick, Robert Livesey, and Rich Attenborough, who are all going through some financial difficulties, but they all also have unique sets of skills to help him pull off a daring bank heist that he'll run with military precision.
I also like that, thanks to Christopher Nolan, I know what Dunkirk was. That helped me a lot.
Yeah.
We've got to teach the Americans history somehow, you know.
Yeah. By the way, this film did make me want to start calling everyone I speak to old darling.
Yes. Sorry, darling.
Oh, darling. Oh, don't worry about that, old darling. Oh, yes,
Well,
old darling. I'll do that.
If I have an issue with that, you could change it to oh dear.
Okay. Yes, we can do that.
Yeah. So, I saw this for the first. I was vaguely aware of its existence, but never really got around to it. I think I saw it for the first time a couple of years ago, and I was floored by it. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. It's just so much fun and quite ahead of its time in a lot of ways. You know, it's quite an interesting one to get into. But essentially, you got these kind of guys who were that they only really knew who they were and kind of how to contribute to society while they're in part of the war effort, basically. And they've all sort of been left adrift since then and fallen off various hardships. And it's quite an interesting kind of comment on like masculinity in that way. I found an essay of the Criterion by Michael Korsky, who said the characters, they all find the normal patterns of post-war behaviour alienating, going to work, living with wives and children, etc., and are haunted by the nostalgia for the masculine community of wartime. It's basically them kind of processing those kind of issues and hopefully getting rich into the bargain as well. So it opens up with Hyde basically, kind of just setting out like the trail of breadcrumbs. Basically, he wants to prove they're worthy of joining his league, and make sure he's that they're not kind of discovered like their first step of their plans. So he cuts up £5 notes and puts them inside the copy of this book that he asked him to read, and then meet him at this hotel for lunch, where we'll give him the lowdown, the full plan and why they're there. And he knows all their dirty little secrets. He knows everything about everyone around the table, and he's essentially using that to lean on them a little bit, but also saying, kind of, we're in this together. We've all done that things to ruin our reputations, but we can forge like a new life for ourselves, after we've pulled this job. It's really kind of there's plenty of scenes with like tension, and kind of I think that bit is built up really well, and just the pacing I think is really good. But it's sort of like some great kind of one-liners and quite unexpectedly kind of frank discussions of for the early 60s of like sexuality and desire and things like that. Like on the early scenes, you have one of the league, before he's joined up, he's essentially his wife's put him on sex rations. She's very much in control. She's in the bath, on the phone, and he comes through and I think he tries to instigate something, and she says, "No, you've had your porridge for this week."
Yeah.
And there's like there's quite explicit kind of discussion of like a couple of the league. They've obviously had like doubts of homosexuality, and one of them was dismissed, from the army because of that. And there's references, it's like what goes on at boarding schools, and like quite a bit of innuendo here and there, about certain moments. You'll look out for a cameo from Oliver Reed in one scene, which I think was his first screen appearance. He wasn't credited for it anyway. He basically plays like the campest Axie you've ever seen. He just kind of swans into a room where they're meeting and asks, if it's a rehearsal space, and they tell him to go speak to the front desk about it because they've been double booked. I mean, it's quite an offensive kind of stereotype he's playing, but it's kind of funny because it's like Oliver Reed, this guy who's kind of known for like quite kind of butch kind of roles, just kind of it was so flamboyant over the top.
Well, it's funny you say that because he looks like Freddie Mercury. So,
That's true. Yeah. So the cast is made of like these kind of British reliables. People who are either kind of known quite well in the UK film industry at the time, or people who are kind of up and coming. So you have like Jack Hawkins and Livesey, both they've both been in the industry for years. Work with people like Powell and Pressburger, but then you have Rich Attenborough, who was just breaking through at the time, and who else was there? There was.
So I didn't know Richard Attenborough was an actor. I just know him, from nature stuff.
That's David Attenborough.
That's David Attenborough. That's his younger brother. Who's still alive, amazingly. He's just turned 98. Yeah.
I keep expecting him to, in the nicest way, I keep expecting him to wake up and find that he's dropped dead.
Yeah. Well, I now realize this is the Jurassic Park guy, so I did know he was an actor.
Yes. He was also a director. He did Magic with Anthony Hopkins.
And Gandhi, most famously.
Yeah. I, for some reason, know him for doing Magic, a.k.a. Killer Ventriloquist Doll.
Yeah. So the film was made by the production company was Allied Filmmakers, who were formed. It was a short-lived production company from 1960 to 64, but it was basically like a mini British United Artists almost. There was a company started by Basil Dearden, Jack Hawkins, Rich Attenborough, and Brian Forbes, who are obviously all in this. And the latter, Brian Forbes, as well as playing one of the gang, also wrote the script. So it's very much kind of an in-house kind of creative effort. And apparently it'd been knocked. The script's been since the book had been so successful in the UK, especially, but it had made it up to the States as well. Hollywood started making inquiries, and I think an American producer was shopping it around for a while. They first offered they approached Cary Grant and David Niven, both to play the Hyde role. I'm not sure if I could see Cary Grant doing it. Really, I'd push maybe see David Niven doing it.
I think Cary Grant is. I mean, I guess they're thinking of him from the Hitchcock stuff, including things like Catch a Thief. The trouble with Cary Grant is he's too charming. Yeah. In a way, these guys, they are technically kind of all criminals, and they actually kind of by the end don't really do anything to kind of bring themselves like they don't kind of repent or anything like that. You can't imagine Cary Grant doing that. You'd have to have him kind of repent or give something money back.
They've got kind of charisma, but it's like a fusty old British upper class kind of charisma, which Cary Grant since breaking through to Hollywood. I mean, he was working class, when he was over in the UK, but going over to Hollywood, he was like this debonair kind of international jet set kind of, wasn't he? Which I don't think it would really fit. So when the project didn't get off the ground in Hollywood, Dearden bought the rights back, and then obviously just recruits his entirely British cast, basically, made, as I said, of kind of stars old and new. So basically, they meet up and he kind of tells them this plan, and basically they're going to run it like a military operation. They're going to kind of bunk together, or sitting like at his house, but basically running it like a barracks almost. With like
it's like being back at school.
Yeah, like duty rosters and different different tasks to achieve. The first thing they've got to do, obviously, before they rob this bank is to procure the weapons they need to do the hold up. So, and to that they go to a military base and fake an inspection. Obviously, being from that world, they can kind of do it convincingly, and they basically pretend they're a general on a surprise visit to look at the kitchen facilities. One of my favourite scenes in the film is so you have now I've got to remember all the names here. Just bear with me a second. How's it gone? Yeah, so Roger Livesey's character. So he's Captain Mycroft. So he's he was a quartermaster back in the army, but basically since then he's sort of been living as like a confidence trickster. He's basically masquerading as a priest for a long time, just to, while he's lying low, and as people looking for him for what he did back in the day.
I will say, I think this is actually something which kind of unites a lot of these kind of, if not just the kind of comedy crime capers, then all of these kind of bad guys teaming up, villain teams kind of thing, is that a lot of them kind of have turned to crime after the respectable jobs that they had no longer have use for their skills. And that kind of allows a viewer to kind of empathize with them a little bit, that you have some empathy with them. If they're completely devoid of everything, and this is, I think, what separates it from something like a gangster film. So is that those most of the times, as much as kind of Scorsese writes great characters, a lot of the characters are completely reprehensible, and you're not meant to like them, and they are awful. And De Niro plays the most depraved individuals half the time.
Coming to a theater near you, movie critics turned bank robbers. Thanks to AI.
And he can kind of see they're all kind of falling on hard times because war is kind of all they know, right? It's the only thing that gives them purpose. So the younger ones, have been able to get like steady work, and they've turned to crime. The older ones, like especially in Hyde's case, he was forced to retire. He was happy doing what he was doing, but he was pushed out, and he resents that. So.
And this is something which will come up again in the Wild Bunch, and to a certain extent in Taking to Pelham 1, 2, 3, that they all had respectable jobs, and they've lost that job. So they used the skills that they had that were perfectly happy serving kind of the world and the community to nefarious ends because society has pushed them to it.
Yeah. So when all these letters, these invitations to this meeting going out, and Mycroft receives his, he's still masquerading as a priest, and someone brings him the letter, and he asks who dropped it off, and they thought, she thinks it was the police. And as soon as she leaves the room, he panics and just grabs a suitcase full of porn magazines and tries to get out there, which is a lovely touch.
I mean, again, we are obviously doing this about somebody masquerading as a priest with ulterior motives hours after the new pope has been announced. There is no connection at all.
Yeah. Interestingly, this is released in the same year, within a few months of Peeping Tom as well, and this obviously nowhere near as kind of salacious as that, but there was a bit of a crossover, like all the casts kind of got to know each other, and they were like sharing a canteen, and I think they used a couple of the same kind of streets around London and stuff for filming, but yes, so they have this. They kind of fake this inspection, and Mycroft is pretending to be this old war dog, this old general, and he takes his staff around the kitchen, and I say it's great pleasure in making Hyde eat this horrible rubbery-looking egg. And then while Race, who's the kind of the bounder of the group, is very 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 kind of prim and drawling, and kind of he's the one who calls everyone old darling, which he says is a horrible habit he picks up from living in the YMCA for too long.
But by the way, that actor's full name is Nigel Dennis Patrick Waymus Gorman.
Yes,
that's a lot of names.
Nigel Patrick, who I'm going to call Budget Richard Burton.
Oh, you definitely would not have been able to afford it. Actually, you might have been able to just about at this point. Give it another 5 years, you definitely would.
Yeah, pre-Cleopatra and Spy Came In From the Cold, you might just manage it.
Yeah. Is he in The Robe as well, I think?
Yeah. I think so.
Nigel is probably a top 3 posh British stereotype name for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I've never met an American named Nigel.
Yeah. So while
he's
thinking
Nigel Bruce.
while he's kind of trying not to laugh, is the gang leader kind of be forced to eat this horrible thing. Then Mycroft passes him a plate of equally horrible looking soup. makes him eat that. So that's a nice little bit of comedy relief. While that's going on, the younger members of the gang are pretending to be like phone repairmen, basically, and they're cutting their communications outside while while the remaining ones go into the weapons depot and steal as many guns and equipment as they can.
I should obviously bring up very quickly the whole army scene. Please bear in mind this is only 2 years after Carry On Sergeant came out, which is the first Carry On film. So I don't know if there's a riffing off that and the kind of mocking the kind of British military and things like that. Obviously, sort of 10, 15 years after the war. But
it could be because that they are kind of shown, the people on base are shown to be a bit incompetent and kind of panicky, and so like the ranking officers are off site at the time, and when Race kind of calls in saying, "Well, I want to speak to meet your commanding officer, dear boy. Where is he? Why is he not there?" And
once again, we will do the Carry On films at some point. But
yeah,
we're going to need to go through them all.
Yeah. They've also decided that at this point, to kind of, so they're not suspected, to kind of throw another kind of red herring out there. They're going to pretend they're going to blame the IRA and make sure at least a couple of them in the gang put on bad Irish accents to really sell it. I think it's like judicious use of your accents, I think is what they're advised to use.
By the way, I couldn't tell the difference. So
no.
Well, you can't tell the difference between this and an Irish accent.
But between a good one and a bad one.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I mean,
we can do bad Irish accents. Yeah. Somebody who's Irish will do a good one.
Hoi titty toy titty toy.
Yeah, it's only like the tall guy who suspects of being gay who actually commits to it. I think really the others kind of just mumble, I think, and just pretend, try and get away with it. So they get their weapons and kind of, and then there are kind of the getaway vehicles and everything like that. That's Race's job, and
that would be Race's job.
Yeah,
as opposed to an Italian job.
I mean, so Nigel Patrick. So as you say, Nigel Patrick is a very English-sounding name, but then playing Major Peter Race, who is also a very posh-sounding English character name.
You need a proper mount, something, a mount batten, maybe.
Yeah.
Properly going.
Yeah. So they steal their vehicle. Hyde is annoyed at Race not doing it carefully enough, doing it in broad daylight, and not really covering his tracks particularly carefully. Because they've all got their little areas of expertise, and he's supposed to be like the transport man, basically. So you just make sure that all that goes smoothly.
By the way, fun cultural difference. I didn't know you called license plates number plates, so that's exciting.
Yeah.
I kind of hadn't even clocked that would be a thing.
Yeah.
Because we hear license plates so much over here in Britain, because we get so much American media coming in.
Yeah.
Even though we call them number plates, I wouldn't have thought that number plates is purely a thing because I hear both. Even though I only say the one, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
I mean, it's got numbers on it. What do you want?
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't have your license. That's separate.
Exactly.
Yeah. So after one final night of revelries, they kind of get all their luggage ready, to pile in all the money they plan to, the plan to be stealing in the morning, drive into London in the early hours. It's really weird seeing real London streets so quiet. Like in this era, it's like you see films from like the late 50s, early 60s, and like when they're on location, it just looks so strange. Because like if you go to central London now, all those buildings are still there. They look pretty much the same with like some newer ones around them, but just the volume of traffic and stuff, it just makes all the difference.
I was going to say, the streets will not be this quiet again until 28 days later, pretty much.
Yeah,
2020.
Yeah. I don't know if you're interested, but there's a website called realstreets.com, real spelt like film real. They're basically from like on-set photos and stuff. They identify the locations and give you directions basically to where all these things are filmed. And literally, they go into so much detail of this one. Literally, every shot of London, they know exactly where it was shot, and so you can take a little kind of walking tour of this whole thing if you really wanted.
Kieran's going to do that for Gareth Edwards' Welsh films.
Yeah.
Well, Gareth Edwards isn't Welsh. Gareth Evans, however.
Oh my God, you're right.
I'm not going to go and do Godzilla.
So in like a bit of quite heavy-handed symbolism, they drive under the Statue of Justice at the Old Bailey as they go into London.
Yeah.
So, but Justice is watching them or not watching them if it's blind Justice. And yes, so they get into London, kind of, and they split off into groups. They're different objectives. So one of them, some of them pretend to be workmen, putting up like some barriers, for like sewage works essentially. And others go into the bank with their gas masks on, hold the place up, and self smoke grenades and make their escape. But the foils, wouldn't you know, it's by a little boy who's basically the car equivalent of a train spotter.
Yeah.
There's something weird about that number plate. I've not seen that before.
He's doing heroin.
License plate. Yeah. No, this does actually remind me. I can't remember where I heard it. It might have been somebody like Mark Kermode that I saw recently. Most things I hear Mark Kermode, but it may have just been somebody else. I cannot remember where I heard it. But there's the pointing out that pretty much all of these kind of heist, if it's a heist film or a comedy caper, these kind of things, normally what foils their plans is a complete coincidence. It's absolute luck, because in order to make it convincing enough that you think the gang are in some way competent, because if it's an incompetent plan, you're not going to believe it. So it's got to be a certain amount of watertightness. Which means that the only real way that you can bring them to justice, which you kind of have to do in order for the morality of the entire thing to work, is for something absolutely coincidental and rotten luck to go wrong for them. And this is what goes wrong for them.
Yeah. I mean, one of my favorites. I mean, the other film I was considering doing this was the original Ealing Lady Killers, which again is very.
I was thinking of the Lady Killers actually just now because I've seen it a couple of months ago. I was thinking of doing the Italian Job, which everyone knows kind of the ending to that. Again, is kind of complete luck again.
And this definitely does have a slight feeling of Ealing about it. In terms of the tone, kind of that mixture of humor and darkness, and that it's not quite as kind of cozy, I suppose, as like all the Ealing stuff is. There's a bit more of an edge to it than that.
I mean, I was thinking of the Lavender Hill Mob that I watched a couple of years ago with Alec Guinness in it.
And there's no Tom Hanks.
Sorry.
And that's obviously not coincidental, because Dearden had worked for Ealing for a few years. He'd done 2 or 3 films for them, I think, most notably a second in Dead of Night. So. So I think he brought that sensibility with him. It does feel, as Jake says, as it would for Jake, it does feel very British, but even this kind of thing. But I think there's a reason it made a bit more of a splash internationally. I think it's a good story, well told, with interesting characters, and a slightly different take on this kind of thing to the usual. The idea that they're because of their class and their background, they see how you'd execute this kind of thing quite differently to others. I mean, the book apparently was inspired and loosely by, there was a similar event that had gone on, like some, I think some, disgruntled kind of military types had attempted something like this, but hadn't succeeded.
And obviously, you're talking about the Britishness and how well it kind of exported. This is right at the beginning kind of the start of the rise of Beatlemania as well, and obviously James Bond is about to come in the next couple of years, so Britain is leaving kind of the status of the oppressor and becoming kind of culturally cool in terms of an export.
But all of these guys all these characters are about to become even like less relevant than they already are. The world is going to leave them behind. I mean, some of the younger ones, this kind of hints like their hairstyles and stuff. They're getting like some quiffs going, aren't they? So they might be kind of part of the youth culture to an extent over the next few years. But generally, they're all they're outmoded and being left behind. So they just want to make their money and get out there, to a comfy retirement. So they get back to base, having succeeded, thinking they've got away with it. Then 2 things happen in quick succession. You have a visitor at the door. Hides old friend Bunny, who's this why I put my notes for this thing is, you think you're home free, and then a well-meaning idiot and just won't shut up turns up on your doorstep.
Normally that's me, aside from the turning up on the doorstep part.
Yeah, and eventually just turns up, see lots of people say, oh, you're having a party, Norman? Well, invite me in, let's have a few drinks. And he gets absolutely smashed and just talks their ear off.
Well, they're trying to get him smashed, so they have an excuse to bumble him out of the house.
Yeah, but he just keeps asking questions, and he keeps thinking someone's going to slip up. But it's almost like a sigh of relief. They do kind of that they're about to let him go, but then you get calls from the police who basically tracks them down, because of the kids seeing that number plate. And at first it's like that they try and pretend the call was the wrong number, and then Bunny answers the phone and goes, "Oh, it really is the police, Norman." I mean, I can't remember who it plays now, but I can't it's like a Nigel Bruce kind of character, isn't it?
I was thinking exactly of Nigel Bruce.
It's very, very Watson. And hang on a sec, where's he gone, Bunny? So it's Robert Coots who played Brigadier Bunny Warren.
What's his name?
I'm just seeing if I know him from anything else. 40s.
Probably. If there is something, it's probably something that you've seen but didn't know it was him.
Oh, he was in Theatre of Blood with Vincent Price.
Oh, okay. Well, 63?
73.
73, that's the one, yeah.
Along with...
pretty much everyone.
Yeah, but I was going to say along with Jack Hawkins as well, who's also in this. But reading a bit about Jack Hawkins, I had no idea, because he was basically persistent throat cancer, due to like a lifetime of chain smoking. And this was one of the last films where he could perform with like no kind of real impact to his voice. He's basically having an operation between projects every year after this, and up until like the late 60s, where essentially he lost his voice completely. And thereafter, with his permission, he was always dubbed in films, just all of his lines. So he was in probably another 10 films or so after the mid 60s, but it was never his voice, and it was usually his longtime friend Charles Gray who did the dubbing, which is a nice bit of trivia.
I mean, he was Robert Coote was also, strangely enough, we were talking about the Lavender Hill Mob. He was a waiter, uncredited, in the Lavender Hill Mob.
Right,
it goes around a bit.
Definitely, there's lots of connections there. Another critic, Lee Pfeiffer, also said something quite similar to what you said. Basically, they said what exemplified League of Gentlemen is that so American crime films dwelled on violent, vulgar gangsters. Their British counterparts were usually criminals presented as well-mannered dapper types who prefer logic over guns and as their weapon of choice. So yeah, they are armed in this, and they do fire shots, but they don't actually harm anyone, do they? It's trying to think now. Is anyone actually shot in this? I don't think they sort of...
Don't worry, we'll have another movie where people are shot.
Yeah. This is very much the appetizer for what's to come.
I'll tell you what, I would love to see something like this, like set in sort of like samurai Japan or something like that. Or sort of, I don't know, the 1100s Britain, where an entire heist is completely different because of just the technological differences and changes.
Yeah.
Disgruntled, like, crusader soldiers.
Yeah.
A heist film, a samurai heist film as done by Kurosawa.
Yeah, I definitely see it with like medieval knights. You come back from a crusade and they have just taking it out on like the local lord or whatever. So I think, as I said, the scripts I think kind of does kind of give this like a lot of extra kind of life, a lot of extra vitality, and helps make it more memorable. I mean, Brian Forbes, who would go, so he wrote this as well as playing Martin Porter on this, so one of the younger members of the team. But he would go on to have quite a good career as a director as well. He became like a bit of a British institution, like over the next couple of decades. But some of my favourite kind of one-liners in this, I think it's peppered throughout. But I love. So I've already mentioned you've had your porridge for this week. The wife's talking to talking to the sex pest one. I've forgotten his name now. You got Hyde kind of introducing himself and kind of not giving it too much about who he is, but he just says kind of with a slight kind of air of threat to it, just say, "Let's just leave it that I outrank you all."
Yeah. I mean, just a quick thing. If you wanted something else that Ford had done, he eventually went on to direct the '75 version of Stepford Wives.
Yes, of course he did. That was the big one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You had Race's line about, "I never read books from strange men." Because they had asked, Hyde had asked them all to read this book, which had a heist in it, and kind of think about kind of what they thought of it, and is it kind of could it be executed in real life? Is it doable? And obviously, yeah, his refrain throughout calling everyone old darling and referencing his time at the YMCA. But the mother of all is the first time they both meet Race and Hyde, and he comes around his house for a drink, and while taking him upstairs, there's a big portrait at the wall of Hyde's wife, and Race asks if she's died, and Hyde replies with, "I regret to say the bitch is still going strong."
There are just some lines like that.
I haven't been able to look up yet, but I wonder if that's the first use of "bitch" like that in a British movie. I mean, there can't be many others if it wasn't.
I was going to say for this time in very kind of proper British cinema, it's quite racy. It's quite vulgar.
Yeah, plenty of references to sexual activity.
Yeah.
And
I was shocked by the lady in the bathtub.
Yeah. Yeah, I did see another review from a critic. I can't remember who it was, but it's like a one-line review, and they talked about that actress who is
remember at the same time that this is the same year that this is the same year you have the first flushing lavatory shown on screen as well.
Yeah.
So
that's
this stuff actually is quite racy.
Wait, so we had unflushing lavatories shown prior?
I actually, to be honest, I think it might be the first lavatory.
Yeah.
Or at least deliberately drawn attention to.
That's a bathroom in American.
So she's called Nanette Newman, plays Elizabeth, and as Chris basically said, Nanette Newman makes the most of her two scenes despite not wearing clothes in either of them. Yeah, it's obviously a frank kind of discussion about sexuality and kind of talk about military policy. In the UK Army, I don't think it was quite "don't ask, don't tell," but yeah, I think you could be court-martialed, if you were caught, in intimate relationships with another soldier. So there's references to that and references, to what goes on at boarding schools and at YMCA hostels and in theatre rehearsal spaces.
This is also where I learned the UK has YMCA's. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
There's apparently there's a story about Churchill that I think it might have been one of his stints as Prime Minister. It might have been during the war or not. Somebody comes up to him and goes, "Yeah, one of our kind of top military kind of officers, sort of thing, Mr. Churchill. He was caught in the bushes last night with another individual." And Churchill goes, "Bushes last night? Yes. Bit cold last night, wasn't it?" "Yes, it was, sir." And turns around and goes, "Makes you proud to be British, doesn't it?" I just so hope that's true. It's like Churchill wasn't the greatest man in the world, but that's just I want that line.
So League of Gentlemen, I think if you get a chance, if anyone watching out hasn't seen it, it's well worth your time. I think it's not your typical kind of stuffy kind of British effort. It's a good thriller. It's a good comedy, and it's unexpectedly kind of forthright about certain things for the time period.
Yeah.
So.
What's funny is, to me, it still feels stuffy. It's just, I can tell there's comedy. There's machine guns. That's cool.
It's definitely very British in a certain sense,
Yes.
with that accent.
Yeah.
And I think it's also borne out by the fact that kind of the kind of breaking into the army base comes in like 40, 50 minutes into the film.
Yeah.
You know,
But
it does move,
break-in
but
is
it
a
takes a
strong
while
term.
to get. But okay, admittedly, but that's kind of the first step of the operation.
Yeah.
That makes sense, and it takes a little while to get to it.
Yeah.
You know, there are films now. If you're trying to pitch this, everyone would go slash 20 minutes off the first act, and you might have a chance.
Put a twist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the Coen brothers, I could see remaking this. Like, yeah, they already did Lady Killers.
No, don't make them near this. I've seen what they did to the Lady Killers.
Well, this did make me wonder, is Bunny Lebowski named after this bunny? I don't know.
Who knows?
Probably not.
Who knows?
Google AI said no.
We will come to modern directors taking things from some of the films that we're discussing.
Yeah. Yes. So from something quite gentle, I suppose.
And now for something completely different.
Yeah, now for something completely different. A man with 3 buttocks.
Yeah. I would not use the word stuffy to describe the Wild Bunch, or proper, or pretty much none of the words that were used to describe the other movie. This is very much American film that we're diving into here. So
violence,
yeah. Well, when we think of violence in film, like, you know, one of the like earlier super violent films that I would name is also from 1960, Psycho. You got the blood in the shower, but it's still all montaged, right? It's cut together to create the effect. But we don't actually see, like, you know, blood bursting out of a body or anything. This is something we touched on last week, too. American films are kind of staying away from that. You need to go shoot in Asia if you want to have lots of blood explosions these days. But at one point in time, Hollywood was the mecca, the originator of blood flying out of bodies. So the motion picture production code was super annoying. It made movies really sterile. I mean, they were still good, but they, you know, compared to what you got in the 60s, films were very different beasts, especially horror and thrillers, crime, those kinds of films. So Bonnie and Clyde is kind of the first film cited when you're talking new Hollywood, American film history, post-code era. That's cited as like the origin of blood and more blood and lots of people shot to death. And the next person you think of is Sam Peckinpah when it comes to those things.
I was going to say, we are talking sort of big budget, kind of, I will say non-genre. I know the Western is a genre because obviously the year before this came out, you have stuff like Night of the Living Dead coming out. So places along those lines are throwing not too much blood, but a lot of the horror movies are essentially going, you know what Hammer were doing? Can you do that, please? So it is becoming a thing. But the code also was relaxed in 66, 67, 68, around there.
It pretty much, I think it lost its power was more what it was. It's been a while since I took my professor who wrote the book on censorship, but I think it still existed, just people disregarded it.
MPAA came in 1968.
Yeah. And that's this film actually got an NC-17 rating from them initially. Then they added some things, took some things out, and R rating. There you go. The late 60s were an exciting time for censorship, but
or lack thereof.
Yeah, or lack thereof. But this is the year Easy Rider comes out. Like this is the era where new Hollywood is becoming a thing, and Sam Peckinpah's right there at the forefront of it. So the Wild Bunch.
Just on that quickly, would you, thinking of the year before, would you class something like 2001 as new Hollywood?
No. I wouldn't.
No, it's its own thing, I'd say.
Yeah.
2001 is just, there is no kind of established. It's 2001.
It just is. It is a fact.
Kubrick is in a lot of ways like the forerunner to auteur-driven cinema. Like, you know, he usually kind of, like, obviously people discuss him as an auteur, but when you're talking about the first auteurs, you look in the air where they're actually being identified that way too, and not just.
Yeah. It's just he was talking about kind of in terms of New Hollywood of changing kind of established genres and breaking rules and boundaries and stuff like that. And obviously this is kind of the before this in terms of sci-fi. Yeah. I mean, you kind of have sort of stuff produced by Roger Corman and that's about it, you know. And then 2001 just goes and throws everything at it. If it's not in the New Hollywood, I think it's an equivalent of in terms of changing up a genre to a radical extreme, perhaps. And it looks glorious, obviously. We shall do a Kubrick thing at some point.
Well, unless you're Tarkovsky, and then you hate it, and but it's then trash.
That was 72, wasn't it? I can't remember when Solaris came out.
Oh well, no, he said that he was on record saying that he hated 2001. I don't know when they asked him that. Maybe after whatever it is. Anyway, so. The Western itself, obviously, this is classified as a revision. Kieran, do you have an issue with revisionist Western, or is it just Western?
Well, I think revisionist Western means more than something like Elvis horror does. Really, I think it's actually
or psychological horror.
Psychological horror is a pointless term. Revisionist Western, it depends how much you're revising, I would say.
I mean, essentially, how do you see the myth of the Old West? Is it romantic, or is it kind of down and dirty?
Yeah,
I mean, I say this as somebody who, in now just under 3 weeks, will have essentially pitched a new subgenre of a subgenre of film to the conference. So, like, I can't really say anything.
I mean, someone on record who was particularly not a fan of this film was John Ford, who was obviously the proponent of the classic Western icon.
Well, but
I can tell you who else hated this movie. Pretty much all the critics that saw this at the time. Yeah.
So, revisionist Western, at least in film theory, it has like real meaning. It defies the common tropes of Westerns, which were still going on television at the time. Like you see it in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the TV show that Leonardo DiCaprio's on. What Western media and, you know, a lot of John Ford stuff is there's the good guys, they're the heroes, they're fighting the bad guys, they're taming the West, you know, they're bringing civilization to this terrible place and justice and all of those ideals. America is stretching from the East Coast to the West Coast. And there came a point where even John Ford began to question those things for all of his, you know, classical films that he made. The Searchers is, you know, one of the huge revisionist Westerns in terms of the way it portrays its protagonist. High Noon was in like 52, I think. And that's another one with, I haven't seen it in a long time, so I'm just going off of reading. But it sort of defies the classical Western story in terms of like making things gray.
That's because it was shot in black and white.
I mean, the hero in High Noon is basically finding excuse after excuse to leave, basically, rather than stand and fight, which is quite different.
Very Han Solo of him. And then you have the Sergio Leone movies, which somewhere around here I have US marketing materials for the film from like that release. So any doubt that I had that had influence in America, I mean, it did. It was huge. Contemporary audiences love that movie. So what Peck and Paw is revered for in the revisionist sense isn't like this is the first revisionist Western. There's tons of them. This is the first ultra-violent Western, which uses the ultra-violence to critique and to also just paint a harsher picture of what the world looked like. So you mentioned romanticism of the West. Well, when people got shot in the West, they didn't just like go, oh, and there's just a bloodless, through and through wound. They maybe fall off the top of a building, even the most violent old Westerns are still, they're silly in terms of violence.
And you kind of fell off, maybe throwing a Wilhelm sort of thing, and after all the dust has settled, the guy would look around.
I mean, there is a
maybe
Wilhelm,
give a one-liner and move on. There is a Wilhelm in this, yes. Which, considering this is 68, I'm like, this is early for the Wilhelm to really take on, isn't it? Like, this is. Normally, it's kind of when you get to Star Wars, they start doing it for a laugh, and then it properly takes on. But this is it. But yeah, there's kind of just a sort of. You do it, and then they'll all kind of rally around, and it'd just be like a wide with like 5 of them standing around, and they'll argue. It's like, what the hell happened there? Oh, the Indians got us from the corner. It's like, we'll have to take off, very quickly before we blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, maybe there'll be a, sorry, Sam, you are the best of us. Right, let's get going. And then they'll traipse off, sort of thing.
They will have a funeral for him and have like a priest there and stuff.
Yeah, but it's very quick, and it's normally like sort of, a lot of the films are sort of, fairly cheaply made. A lot of it's on the soundstage. The aspect ratio is fairly boxy. It's not a widescreen. It's normally going to have, Audie Murphy in it. Occasionally you'll see people like Clint Eastwood in the early ones. Gregory Peck occasionally was in a few of them. Obviously, John Wayne. You kind of knew exactly what you were getting, and they all sort of blur into one. At a certain point, you click on a Western now, it's something that's being shown. I mean, in the UK, TCM has gone down. There is no more TCM anymore, which I'm very upset about. It's now Legend, but those kind of shows and channels, it'll be something from the 50s or 60s. It's going to be in black and white. It's going to be about 75 to 80 minutes long. It's going to be fairly bloodless. The good guy's going to get it at the end, and there's going to be a sweeping violin score over the end. Normally, with those, before you cut to before a dissolve to cut to a new scene, you can tell because the film stock will change very, very slightly to like a different color, because that's the bit where the dissolve goes over the top as it changes. So you can tell that it's about, you're like, oh, end of the scene, and there's the dissolve, because the visual, you kind of know what you're getting. This kind of goes, no, we're going to have like proper money thrown at it. We're going to do it properly. We're going to make it very bleak, very nihilistic. It's going to take 2.5 hours to tell. Unless you're Leone, you're not doing it.
I had forgotten how long this was when I put it on. It's like, oh, this is still going.
Yeah.
And a lot of our characters are going to be kind of morally grey in some way.
Oh, yeah. What's fun about this is like you could tell how much Peckinpah likes Kurosawa.
This is strangely enough Seven Samurai.
And funnily enough, Kurosawa is Chris as being probably not the first, but one of the earlier proponents of using into slow motion in his action, in Seven Samurai, and obviously Peckinpah takes it further in this.
Peckinpah's 60s Zack Snyder, for sure.
Yeah.
He crawled so Zack Snyder could, run on a treadmill.
And obviously, if you're making a Western around this time, you will be aware of Magnificent Seven, which is coming on 10 years old at this point, which obviously is based on Seven Samurai.
Yeah. Before we go any further, Jacob, do you want to give us a quick rundown of the plot of
well, first I have a bit more. See, for me, the plot is the least important part of this movie, as good as it is.
I was going to say there is a plot, but there's also just like a sequence of Western style events that happens, that they've kind of strung together.
Yeah. Well, Peckinpah, he wrote for Gunsmoke and other old TV shows. He was on one he wrote for one called The Westerner. Which the photo on Wikipedia is this silly looking cowboy and his dog. It looks the opposite of this. He had a script rejected for it being too subversive and having too bad of content. So, I mean, the guy's basically been trying to make The Last Jedi since the 50s.
A bit so that's a bit like Iko Uwais and Yayan Ruan getting their lightsaber fight taken off.
Yeah. He made films throughout the 60s before this, but I haven't seen any of them. This is the only Peckinpah I've actually watched, so I need to go watch more of it. But he got this film greenlit. They wanted him to make one movie, but around the same time that this is being made, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid is being produced by 20th Century. And so they say, hey, Sam, we need you to actually make this script from another dude. So he spends time rewriting it, shoots it on set in Mexico, and it comes out like 3 months before Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and makes a lot less money, to be fair. Warner Bros. Southern Arts lost out on that battle of the Westerns.
Yeah.
I'll just check if I had seen any of the Peckinpah films. The only other one I've seen is Straw Dogs.
I'm about I don't know 30 pages in to the original book, because it's like I want to read the book before I watch the film, and so I am slowly getting through that because it's on Internet Archive. So when I've done that, I will get to Straw Dogs.
The story of the film is it's a group of villains with sort of a rotating lesser cast, and then like 5 sort of solid. There's 5 solid members, and they have a bunch of different touring members who survive their various jobs over the years. It's a bunch of old guys, and it's time for them to do one last job to get a bunch of money and settle into retirement. This is 1913, by the way, so like we're even beyond the sort of expiring west of Red Dead Redemption. Like this is their vehicle, like cars driving around. World War I is about to break out, and we have the Mexican Revolution happening, and so they cross the border into Texas, or into Mexico from Texas, in order to do that one last job.
I was going to say, this is obviously set on the eve of the First World War, and it's being shot and released during Vietnam as well. Yeah. So obviously all of that is very much playing a part into the...
It took me a while to properly place it in terms of timeline when it was actually meant to be set off. So I knew it was like much later in the Western period, but it was only when like the car drives by, I thought, it must be 1900 and something.
Yeah, and that's, I mean... Actually, no, Jacob, finish the plot first before we go off on
I mean, that's the plot. But real quick on the car driving. The car is driving, but what is happening behind the car is very not 20th century.
Yeah,
that's true.
I mean, the kind of most of the point of... There's kind of 2 points. Well, they're all kind of blurs in one. The film is about kind of the end of the Western, both in terms of the timeline and, as we were saying, in terms of kind of the romanticization of it. The violence in there, as people are getting exposed to the photos that are coming back from Vietnam and the violence that they're going through. This is set on the beginning of World War One, and I think I like the idea that he's kind of Peckinpah's there going, and I mean, apparently he was very nervous while shooting the film that people weren't going to like it and it'd be too violent for them. And I think he eventually reached the conclusion that, look, sometimes life is violent and you can't get away from that, and we should show that life is violent in some cases, and stuff like that.
I do think that he, I didn't read interviews or anything. Like the violence in Peckinpah's film through film theory is not seen as like, it's not glorification. It's not violence for violence's sake. It does have cultural critique, like you said, with Vietnam. It has things to say about the Western. And then there's also the technological and censorship developments that were happening in cinema.
But very, very much at the same time, and this is kind of reflected in the characters in the film, that they are all sort of the aging kind of romantic gunslingers again. You know, they're doing the one last job. They've been doing this for a while in the high point of the Western. And so there is a changing world, a changing technology, a changing dynamic, not only in the real world, in the relationship to the Western that's going on, obviously with Butch Cassidy. This is all reflected in their physical world now changing and being on the cusp of obviously the mass slaughter across the globe. So it's all reflected that this is the end of a kind of a nicer era in a way. It's a bleak, everything is ending, and even though they kind of are violent and do some incredibly violent stuff and will, you know, rob trains and create massacres as a result, it's kind of framed as a sort of, I don't know, there's still a little bit of heroism in there, that they are kind of the last of the true gunslingers, being forced to go into a world that they can't inhabit, and as a result it therefore leads to catastrophe. They're not going quite into that good night, as it were.
And again, linking back to League of Gentlemen, again, they kind of they're disaffected. You know, it's, I think it's don't know if it's outright state or not, but it's certainly implied that, you know, at least some of them they've done their military service. And obviously, they have all the uniforms
with the Confederacy.
But they obviously they weren't happy with their their take home after that, I don't think, and the standard of their life, you know, post being in the military. So again, it's this kind of, you know, getting even, you know, and you know, settling up, you know, and just put things right in their minds.
They're also disaffected outlaws, which is amazing. You know, Bonnie and Clyde is sort of seen as a revival of that spirit. So, I mean, you know, 20-something years after this, but
I mean, even with the kind of they're the bad guys, and you say they're kind of disillusioned and disenfranchised kind of outlaws. You think of sort of the Westerns in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. Even the bad guys side of, but I think because of the bloodlessness of it all, and the quickness and the dialogue, what the hell are you looking at over there? You know, I'm going to shoot you. That kind of thing. There is almost a kind of, even in the bad guy, there's a romantic kind of code of honor, almost sort of feeling about them, in a way that this world, it's only the rough survive, but there's a tough going, almost the way kind of pirates are portrayed now.
But for the most part, these guys are just bad guys. Like even their codes are sort of BS. And there is the moment where Dutch and Pike, those are the two main guys, they have a little conversation about the former outlaw partner who turned bounty hunter to stay out of Yuma. He makes, you know, a promise to the railroad owner that he's going to bring them to justice, quote unquote. And they say, well, he's keeping his word. And Dutch says, well, he's keeping his word to the railroad guy. So they sort of have those differing ideals of like what is more important. And at that point in the film, they have made their word to the Generalissimo of Mexico, the evil sort of dictator figure, who's smoking cigar. Is it supposed to be like a Castro thing too? I don't know. Probably not.
Say it is. We sound more intelligent.
The portrayal of the Mexicans here isn't balanced or nuanced at all.
Well, I will say this: they just speak Spanish. There's not subtitles. The subtitles that I had are the Spanish. So I'll give that to it at least. Like, I mean, they are portrayed to be, now this is the evil regime. They are sort of portrayed to be almost comically evil. And then there's also the rebels on the other side. But like, I liked that they just spoke Spanish and that there really isn't any context. They translate some of it. They say, hey, say this. But for the most part, you're just kind of listening to Spanish, and it really grabbed me.
And I think a lot of the time you don't actually need the translation, because if the direction is done well enough and it's written well enough, then you can get what they're saying.
In Spielberg's West Side Story, one of his more interesting decisions was making the decision of the Puerto Ricans in their domestic spaces, when they're not singing, just the general kind of socializing and just being natural. He didn't subtitle their their Spanish dialogue for those scenes either, and it doesn't really matter. You get from context clues generally what they're talking about or what's going on. It's not essential by any means.
Yeah. The sort of two main sequences in this movie are the opening and closing gunfights, which the first opening shootout, which first the credits happen to introduce all of the different aspects of that little train heist. Well, train, like, I don't know, the offices of the train. I don't know what to call it, but they're.
No, but there is actually a train heist later.
Yeah,
on, which is obviously going off like the Great Train Robbery and stuff like that. So.
Yeah. But the opening gunfight, it was originally 21 minutes long, and so they had to get kind of creative in the edit room to create the 5-minute sequence that you watch. And I think that's a point where I think the strengths of this film are really shown in the editing throughout that, where Kieran, you talk about films being cut to hell. This is very deliberately montaged together for all of these different spaces, all of these different, people within the story that's going on. It's cut super well.
Yeah, I mean, I remember watching this a number of years ago and going back and going, I wonder how much I'll actually remember. But then that opening sequence, I was watching it going, I actually remember quite a bit of this. If not going kind of, I remember this happening, just going, oh, yes, I have seen this. And it's
amazing.
Gloriously done.
Yeah. I remember the opening and the closing. Amazing. I'd forgotten about the train heist itself, but that's still an incredible.
I'd forgotten that
as well.
It's so well done. It's so well shot. It's a beautifully well done bit of
by the way,
cutting and all that.
Do you guys know about the thing with the opening credits? How with the freeze frames with the names against the stills of the characters.
Do tell.
Peckinpah does that with William Holden and Ernest Borgnine. But he didn't get. He wasn't getting on with Robert Ryan. He was demanding changes to the scenes, better lines, and all of that. So they were really clashing. So as revenge, after William Holden and Ernest Borgnine get their freeze frame their face with their names for a good 5 seconds, comes to Robert Ryan, and Robert Ryan's name appears for 5 seconds on a freeze frame against a horse's ass.
I was very confused about why some people had their face and some didn't. So that's great.
Yes, so that was Peckinpah's petty little revenge against the star who wasn't behaving.
Sam Pettypah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
The
opening scene. If you want to know how to create kind of a good opening, and the thing is, this sequence kind of almost has no bearing on the rest. It's a classic sort of cold open that kind of has almost no bearing on the plot. It's there to introduce some characters.
It's that and have an exciting action sequence so that the audience is hooked. Because we're about to have a lot of not so exciting sequences.
I mean, a lot of action movies do that and they don't do it very well, and the entire thing is pointless. Here, it might technically be kind of not needed, but it's so well done that it kind of is. And I think also the fact that there's then another sort of 40-45 minutes before you get another big sequence. If you hadn't had this in, somebody would have gone, we need something earlier on. And again, there are sometimes and kind of back in the day. I mean, this is back in the day. You can get away with stuff differently. Now you kind of need something happening every 20 minutes, otherwise the producers are having a go at you. Hence the reason why in Screen the principal is killed off, because everyone went, the producer went, there's no kills from the beginning to Tatum, like an hour and 10 minutes in. We need but anyway, so the fact that this is at the beginning, it even though it's kind of technically not needed, it kind of is for the pacing as well.
It is. It's definitely needed because that's this.
It's not needed in terms of plot, but it's not needed in terms of pacing.
It is. I mean, in terms of plot, I guess, but also they don't get anything. Like that's the whole point. Is they maybe this is the one last job, but all they get is steel washers, And so, they could just show up at the first scene with Freddy where he's laughing at them for not getting anything. But then you'd go, well, why didn't I get to watch the whole... It's a movie. You could write anything, too, I guess.
I mean, you could have had the opening sort of 5-10 minutes away from them going to the Mexicans, is what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you could do that, too. But why are they here to get money? How did they know about, we learn about the characters, too, which you mentioned. Big part of this. Angel is sort of the reason that they're going to Mexico. He's there. They're going to his hometown, which is called Agua Verde, I believe. Yeah.
Agua Verde. And he's the token Latino of the gang.
So is it Angel or Angel? Therefore,
it's one of them. I'm saying Angel because I'm Anglo.
I'd say the Gringos would say Angel. And the Mexicans wouldn't.
When they discover that all they have are washers, so my first time through,
they discovered that crime doesn't pay. Sorry,
I forgot that Freddy was part of the gang, and I thought he was just a random old guy. But yeah, they have the little conversation about horses. He's like watching them or whatever. I like Freddy a lot. The dude is hilarious. Also, all of the actors in this movie, they've done like real Western work, or they have Academy Awards. The guy who plays the Generalissimo, he's a huge Mexican director and won the Palme d'Or in the 40s. So, this is like, I don't know, just whatever director brings in just all kinds of amazing actors from all kinds of different areas of cinema. Very
it's the kind of thing where
you
can tell from the cast the fact that it is so sad they signed on for a reason, and probably it wasn't the money. It normally if you've got a cast where you recognize one big name, one vaguely okay name, and the rest nobody's heard of. Normally that's probably the big name was paid to be there, and that's how it got funding. When you see a decent lineup of people with awards and all that kind of thing and worked on it, you kind of know that there's something in the script in order to attract all of the talent there. Because after the first two, you go, okay, we don't need to pay anybody the big bucks anymore because we've got it coming in now.
And also on their way out of the first robbery, I brought up the thing about, giving them a proper burial in like a traditional Western. I think of the scene in The Searchers where John Wayne shoots the dead Comanche so that he can't go to the spirit world. In this, they have the gang go, hey, should we bury this guy that you just mercy killed? And they all say no, sarcastically. And they write off because they're bad guys and they don't care about giving last rites. And I think that's a good way of socially, showing us, these are a bunch of murderers. And also they don't care about dead or alive people. It's all about the money. They go to Mexico.
Wild.
They are... I like the part where, as they're dying, Dutch is holding Pike in his arms, and he says, "Were we a wild bunch?" And he goes, "We were the wildest." I'm sad that wasn't in
Wink
this.
to the camera.
Roll credits.
Oh gosh, what does happen? They go to Mexico, and they get tasked by they go to brothels. Like, this whole sequence, it's just like establishing what is life like.
Yeah, featuring real sex workers, because apparently that was the easiest way to do this. Just pay a load of sex workers for the day and their time.
Yeah.
To frolic with actors in a big tub of wine.
Yes, lots of partying, lots of bathtubs, asking to see boobs, and then they meet the Generalissimo, and he says, "Hey, go get me some guns, and I'll pay you gold." And so that's why the train robbery happens. They have to go steal a bunch of guns. By the way, also, this is a movie that came prior to, like, animal rights on Film Advocate. A lot of questionable horse scenes in this movie.
I was wincing quite a bit at what they were doing with horses in this. It's not good.
I'm surprised they didn't shoot horses with the machine gun just for the realism.
I will say, however, with the bridge explosion and the train robbery together, I'm thinking very much. My microphone has an issue. Very much a Buster Keaton where they blow up the bridge, the train collapses. It's almost like they're trying to do that but couldn't do it, so they did it in two parts. We'll have the train and then we'll have the bridge blow up, and if you put them together in your head, we are doing Buster Keaton right here. We're
And they blow up the bridge because the former outlaw bounty hunter, who is kind of a good guy ish. I mean, I'd say he has more of a code than the other ones, maybe. But yeah, they're blowing it up to stopping them from getting the guns to the general.
And then they finally get it there. The guns there.
Well, they take some, because Angel, or Angel, he is. So whenever they first meet the general, it's this giant like party scene. I'm having a feeling that George Lucas liked this a lot too, because he reminds me of Jabba the Hutt with the women around him and just lots of, I guess, orgiastic sort of Roman party things going on. I was surprised by that, and they can't trust this guy, so they got to hide the guns in the desert. In that first scene, Angel is shown to be sort of a rebel sympathizer, and he shoots his former girlfriend, who the general had as like a sex slave, or I don't know, something. But yeah, Angel, rebel sympathizer. They take stuff to the rebels who are hiding out in caves. Pancho Villa's name gets mentioned. I don't know if he's ever actually in the movie. And the plan is to take these guns a little bit at a time to the general so that he can't just, like, I guess, kill them. This is probably where being an old man outlaw comes into play. You have the wisdom and experience of many decades of outlawing.
Yeah.
Yes. So that they parcel them out. Unfortunately, whenever they go see the Generalissimo for the last bit, it's Angel and Dutch. And it turns out the lady that he shot, who was his ex-girlfriend, well, her mom ratted him out to the general, and she knows that he stole the guns to give to the rebels. And so he gets beaten up, and Dutch, because he's a bad guy, says, well, you got to do what you got to do. And so they let him go. He doesn't save his buddy. And, well, gosh darn it, when they try and go back and buy him, they try to buy him from the general. He's dragging him around on the car, sort of like a very medieval punishment, dragging people on ropes. He's bloodied. They say, oh, you want to buy this guy? Yeah. No, he's not going to live for much longer.
If they were pirates, he would be being keel hauled. Yeah, that's the equivalent of it, really.
Yeah.
Although keel hauling actually might be worse.
Well, and not good. In the scene where they do finally come and save him, he'd be walking the plank if this were a pirate movie. But yeah, they leave. They have all their gold, and I forget why they decide to, but I guess they just sort of they want to go out on their own terms, something like that, and they're going to go save him from the Mexican general. By the way, those are the bad Mexicans. There are good Mexicans in this movie, so they're not all bad. There's also innocent people, just all kinds of Mexicans in this movie. They go back and they say, hey, we're going to take our friend. And also, for some reason, there's these two German guys that work for the general. I guess because this is post-World War II and Germans are evil. It's almost World War I and Germans are evil. I really didn't get that.
Yeah, they were like representatives from the Imperial German Army.
Look, we managed to stop ourselves doing a bad Irish accent. You've gone for the German as well. We're never going to get out of here alive.
Well, speaking of that, that's what happens. They start shooting all the main bad guys, starting with the Generalissimo, and then they shoot the other main Mexican guys. They shoot the German guys. They finally get a hold of the machine gun and just start mowing down Mexican soldiers. So many people die. There's so many slow-mo shots, so many different angles. Just another super well-edited sequence, ultra-violent. It's basically a video game. This is a video game put on TV screen.
Yeah, now at this point, when he's watching this in the cinema, John Woo was born as a creative force. He's like, yep, I know what I'm doing in Hong Kong.
I have, like, this is ringing bells. I'm fairly sure that Steve Neal in genre, you know, one of the classics that everybody's kind of forced to read at some point in film studies, does a thing on one of his essays about the Western and kind of, because you were saying, like, why do they go and save him right at the end? Well, I from flashbacks of reading one of these essays that you kind of forced to read at film studies, A level or undergrad, something like that. Something along that, he says something like, kind of, it's weird that you can kill like 20 people throughout the film, but if you kind of save one near the end, even if you die whilst doing it, you are now the good guy, and therefore audience will be absolutely okay with it because you have committed some act of kind of okayness in order to kind of justify yourself. Kind of, you can now get out of you can now move to Purgatorio instead of Inferno. Almost
there's almost a moment of that here. It's where Pike is trying to find a guy to kill. He goes into a room. There's a lady in there. There's her reflection. He shoots the mirror. There's a guy behind it, and he kind of stumbles out shot. But then she shoots him, and he turns around and says the B word and kills her.
Yeah, because that was like that was a
Bridget
flashback, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was a flashback to like his like lowest moment or something, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah.
No, the walking in and asking for the guy.
You can tell it's a flashback. You can tell it's a flashback because he's not wearing his mustache then.
Oh, okay. Well, that's intercut into the final fight.
I know, it's weird. It's weird.
Okay.
At that point.
Well, there you go. That is an intercut part. I need to watch this. I didn't make it all the way to that scene my second time through, so I'll watch that a second time. Yeah, but unfortunately, fortunately, because they're bad, they all die. Everybody dies. But the bad guy, former outlaw, good guy, bounty hunter trying to stay out of prison, he comes along, and his gang, which has a couple of jokesters, like a C-3PO R2-D2 sort of. I can't remember the Seventh Samurai version, so I'm calling them that. They're fighting about who killed who throughout the whole movie. But good guy, bad guy, he just can't bring himself to take them back. Yeah. Partially,
I was going to say it's about Legolas and Gimli and Lord of the Rings keeping track of their kill count, isn't it?
Yeah. But much less competent. And I don't know if he knows that they're going to get ambushed, or if he. I don't know. It's ambiguous, but yeah, they get killed. The gang gives the gang a proper burial, and Freddy rides up to good guy, bad guy, and says, well, you want to come be an outlaw again? We're going to stay here in Mexico and do outlaw stuff. And he says, sure. And then the movie ends.
Yeah, I do like that because I for some reason, there's such a sense of kind of bleak nihilism in it, of sort of, even though there's bad people, again, because of that act of like almost heroism at the end, there's almost a kind of the romantic era is ending, kind of a time is passing. I've given vibes of there's a similar kind of bleak atmosphere, a bit like Morgan Freeman at the end of Seven, almost. Even though he's a bad guy, but it has that kind of, you know, staring off into the thunderclouds, sort of. The world is a darker place.
Can't escape your fate.
Yeah. But these 2 or 3 years of new Hollywood, they were like, this was the time to, you know, get rid of the rising off into the sunset, and you know, you just it was more commonplace to have your heroes dying like hail bullets than it was for them to actually get through it all.
Yeah.
I was going to say Indiana Jones will bring the riding off into the sunset back down.
Yeah. And also, not only was John Woo born in the theater while this was playing, Quentin Tarantino was too, although obviously his use of ultraviolence is a lot less, let's say, thoughtful, perhaps.
Yeah.
As he once said in an interview, this is Tarantino. It's like I have violence in my movies, but that's because it's a Tarantino movie. You don't go to see Metallica and ask him to turn the music down.
Yeah. And then Kieran, you mentioned that, I mean, the stuffy critics didn't like this movie, but the hip new people like Vincent Canby and Pauline Kael, they did like this. Yeah. And those are the people who are cited on the Wikipedia page whenever you go check out reviews. But obviously, this did not make very much money because it was made on a pretty decent budget, and then it made over it, but not very much. And obviously, it's beloved now. It is a sign of things to continue to change in Hollywood. And yeah, thankfully, we got a whole new batch of directors because of this movie, surely.
Yeah. A quote from in Roger Ebert's review, and this is a review he's got on his site from 2002, so it's a retrospective one, but I think he was watching it at the time. He said, at a press conference the morning after the premiere, Holden and Peckinpah hid behind dark glasses and deep scowls. It was rumoured that Holden had been appalled when he saw the film. After a reporter from the Reader's Digest got up to ask why would this film ever made, I stood up and called it a masterpiece. I felt then and now that The Wild Bunch is one of the great defining moments of modern movies. So... For once, except for once, he had some slips here and there, but Ebert got it right on this one, and he does give it 4 out of 4.
Also, unfortunately for the world, Peckinpah only made movies for another decade before his old hard living caught up to him at the age of 59. So we could have had another 10 movies out of him in theory. I mean, it's a shame.
It happens sometimes, so. So you got it. This is what happens.
You know what else happens is more train stuff.
More Tarantino references.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
So let's jump forward another 5 years or so.
Yeah, the incredibly long distance. Not to the remake. There have actually been 2 remakes of this movie. One was a TV movie in the 90s, and one was a 2009 version with some people in it that you may have heard of.
With Denzel and Travolta, wasn't it?
Exactly, yes. Apparently it is not great.
By the way, the author of the novel, his name sounds like a royalty-free version of Morgan Freeman.
What's his name? John Godey.
Morton Friedgood.
Morton Freeman under the pen name John Godey. Yeah,
I would use that pen name as well. If my name was Morton Friedgood.
Yes, definitely. Wrote a load of stuff. Seems mostly kind of thrillers, essentially stuff that not kind of incredibly well sort of literature, shall we say. A lot of it seems to be quite pulpy, but a sort of crime thriller novel written in 1973 that then gets made into The Taking of Pelham 123 in 1974, directed by Joseph Sargent, that I'm now going to see if he's done anything else that is of particular note.
He popped into existence.
Jaws the Revenge. Okay, not good. Somehow. Directing loads of television films, essentially.
Jacob, I was just going to say, it's nice to see Walter Matthau actually give a crap in this movie.
Man.
Compared to Hello Dolly.
And I mean, it's kind of just, in principle, it is a proper, almost neo-noir kind of crime thriller, where you have 4 guys that get onto a subway train in New York City in 73/74, whenever you want to call it, and say, we're taking the train hostage, stop it, uncouple it, issue demands, the demands get met. Are they going to get away? Are they not?
By the way, the turnaround from novel to film, incredible.
It is. And one thing that's interesting is probably the thing that we're going to bring it up early. The thing that probably the film is most famous for now are the code names of the characters. So you have Robert Shaw as Mr. Blue, Martin Balsam as Mr. Green, Hector Elizondo as Mr. Grey, and Earl Hindman as Mr. Brown. And as we mentioned Tarantino earlier, this is where the code names come from in Reservoir Dogs. With the whole thing of Steve Buscemi getting very annoyed at being called Mr. Pink. Interestingly enough, this was created for the film. They do not have code names in the novel. They use their actual names. Obviously, I've now forgotten them all.
This sounds like a very lazily written book. If they're just using their real names to rob a train.
Well, they never refer to each other by their real names.
That's good.
It's like a welcome Longman, Ryder, and something else.
Do they dress identically in the novel as well?
They are dressed, but they're not dressed like they are here. They're in black coats and hats, and they have hockey ski masks over their faces. Proper kind of typical bank robber kind of thing. They don't all go for looking very close to Groucho Marx.
Yeah, because I like the low key effort, but kind of it probably would work like to make them harder to kind of differentiate and remember afterwards. You know, it's just we'll all wear a coat, we'll all wear glasses, we'll all wear a moustache and a hat.
Yeah, and as Henry Cavill proved, you can be right next to. Have you heard this one? That when Man of Steel was coming out, or it was either Man of Steel or BVS, they wanted to see how well the Clark Kent disguise actually was, because everyone's like, that's the common joke, isn't it? That it's just a pair of glasses and suddenly take him off and it's Superman. How does nobody? So he went and stood under a giant billboard of himself in Times Square, New York, with a Superman T-shirt on, and two people stopped him, and both of them were kind of asking for directions. Nobody recognized him. He stood there for like 2 hours. So the whole thing.
But have you ever seen that? Have you ever seen that outtake with Christopher Reeve where he, like a rehearsal where he takes off the glasses and he literally transforms before your eyes? It's like a magic trick.
Yeah.
Just the physicality, the way he holds himself is just so different.
I will say,
you can't believe
if either of you were running around as a superhero, I see you once a week, I would go, I think that's Kieran. Like, he does have a man bun, but I'm pretty sure.
I tell you what, though, all I'd have to do is cut the hair off, and you wouldn't recognize me.
He keeps saving his girlfriend. Like, well, that's weird.
It is weird because I don't have one. Anyway, crying. Anyway,
his girlfriend that I work with too, by the way.
How does Peter Parker keep getting these great shots? Anyway, yeah, the thing that I think is actually kind of more interesting than the plot. I mean, the plot is. I mean, the film is ridiculously well done. I mean, in terms of just the fact is, it's not far off the book. Pretty much everything is in there. There's a couple of things that are changed. One of the things that they have in the book is backstories for a lot of the characters, because in the nicest way, the novel is 300 odd pages. I don't know what the word count is. It's going to be sort of around probably 60, 65, 70,000 words.
Triple spaced.
Trying to keep everything there without having some backstory for characters to give some depth is quite tricky. The film manages to get away with it, though.
Yeah, because it's like a tight kind of no facts, no nonsense kind of thriller, isn't it? It's like...
and they both do the cross cutting. So it's back and forth to here, to that person, to that character, that character, that character, and that actually is really sometimes. It's stupid because we want to stay with the characters. This time it actually is needed because the film takes place over like a 1.5, 2 hour window for the most part. And it's going to get dull if you keep it there. So you need to keep the action going. And there are large parts where nothing much is happening. Like, I want to call it's not called Ryder. Who's Robert Shaw in this? What color is he? Mr. Blue. Half the time he's got a crossword out. Because he's like, we've got to wait for them to get the money and sort it all out and do stuff like that. And Mr. Grey in this, I mean, even in the book, the equivalent, well, it's the same character, but I can't remember the name. Is there kind of is a fairly lecherous character, far more rabidly sex craved is probably the easiest and nicest way to put it in the book. His character, it doesn't come through as much in the film version, but he's there kind of eyeing up sort of a couple of the women on the train, because he's just like, I'm really bored, and he's kind of, that side of him is coming to the forefront whilst nothing's going on, because nobody's coming down the tunnel and nothing's going on there. So the fact that you've actually got the cutting around and going like that actually means that there's always something going on, and the fact that realistically there's like an hour of not much happening because it's all phone calls and calls to this person, that person, keeps it going, which is really nice from a pacing point of view. And you've got this, it's lean, but there's always something happening, which is a really hard fine line to go between putting too much stuff in and keeping it too thin. And the cutting and the direction, the editing on this is so tight. It's so well done. One of the most interesting things I think about this film is it perfectly shows off kind of New York in the early 70s, which was not the glamorous sort of place of glitz and glamour that we think it is now. The book goes much deeper into the fact there's graffiti everywhere. There's, you know, the crime everywhere. This is only you had a blackout in 65, and it's only a couple of years from the major blackout that was 24 hours long in 77. You know,
I mean, the production designers wanted apparently to make their train carriage a lot more kind of lived in and graffiti covered and stuff. But then New York Transport kind of stepped in and said, no, we don't want you to use one of the shitty carriages. We want a nice clean one, please.
Yeah,
and they car in the US. By the way,
they were using a private station. Actually, and apparently one of the things for that was that they could use that. It was some apparently like a mayor or some politician had built it so that it was closer to his store. This is going back a while, obviously, but because kind of hardly nobody pretty much it wasn't used, it was private, they essentially managed to use that whenever they're using kind of the actual kind of underground platforms. But one of the things was they were told it has to be spotless, you can't have it graffiti or anything like that. So there was Hector, what's his name,
Elizondo,
that's his name. He was saying in an interview, every time you go above ground you see all the graffiti and everything and the grime and stuff. Whenever you go below ground, it's spotless. And that's because they weren't allowed to do anything with it. That was kind of the stipulation of being able to film that.
It's a brand new train.
Yeah. So speak of the mayor's involvement, I do love the mayor in this. He's another one of those great useless movie mayors, along with the Jaws mayor, isn't he? It's just he's got flu, he just wants a sick day, but his advisors are making him come out and deal with this emergency. Think about his ratings.
Well, I mean, the trouble was most of the mayors at that time were fairly corrupt, and a load of the main politicians in that thing were just completely corrupt to the absolute hilt. And it's in both the novel and in this that there's a load of kind of violence and protests about the mayor, and there's always reporters going to the people on the street and they're like, I think he's absolutely useless, he should do this, why don't they do that? And there's all the infighting and everything that's going on. I mean, there is a reason, I mean, actually in the book they specifically kind of refer to it as Gotham. And you know, Jacob, do you know why where Gotham the name comes from?
I'm gonna guess mourning for people who wear black.
No.
Oh.
There is a village in Nottinghamshire in England called Gotham.
Oh, and they wear a lot of black. Got it. They dress up as bats.
No. So what it was is there is a story that King John wanted to. I can't remember if he was building a road. This is hundreds and hundreds of years ago. I can't remember if it was
It'd be weird if he was trying to now.
1200s, 1300s, yeah, but I don't know how good your English kind of king's lineage is. He was trying to build. I'm not sure if what it was, but it was going near the village of Gotham.
Is this John as in John from Robin Hood's John?
I believe so.
If it is, then that'll
well,
be...
he's the phony king of England. I know that guy.
From 1199 to 1216.
Yeah, that'll be 1100s. Yeah, 1100s to 12. Yeah.
Is he doing graffiti? Like, is that where this is going?
No, he wanted to build either it was a road or a kind of sort of new house, kind of whatever place nearby, and essentially the village there went kind of, if he does that, our kind of quiet way of life is going to get disturbed. So what they did is, as a community, decided, let's just pretend to be really, really stupid and mad. And as a result, they didn't go anywhere near it, and this road or whatever didn't get built. Now, centuries later,
how I got these scars.
Centuries later, Washington Irving of Legend of Sleepy Hollow fame is doing a story set in the newly kind of building New York, and wanted kind of a name to kind of give it this kind of term of madness and insanity and kind of all that kind of thing. Came across this story, and so in one of his stories kind of used Gotham as a shorthand for New York. And so years later, Gotham City for Batman gets kind of taken from this as it's now stuck. So there's a reason why kind of Gotham City in terms of Batman is kind of crime riddled and graffiti, and actually
there's so many mad people.
Well, actually, if you think about it, I mean, there's a blackout that happens in '77 where there's loads of crime and polluting and vandalism, literally as a result. Essentially, lightning strikes take out some of the power grids, and it's just like massive power overloads because the only few remaining can't handle it, so they have to shut it all down.
It's Electro.
And, well, the thing is, there's literally like tens of millions worth of damaging because of all the looting and stuff in like the Bronx and places like that, and sort of, you know, like sort of thousands of businesses are smashed in and stuff like that, and it's kind of seen as this is what New York is, and this is '77. Only 12 years later, it's pretty much the exact thing happened in Batman '89. You know, Tim Burton's one.
Batman's on a lag.
There is certainly a connection going all the way through, and that kind of thing, seediness, definitely seeps in. It's still in the film to a lesser extent, to a larger extent in the novel as well. But there's still definitely that kind of air of sort of, this is the unglamorous world of New York. So, there's danger lurking around every corner.
So what we're asking is, where was Batman when this train was taken?
Or why didn't a New York billionaire become Batman?
I was going to say, we know Spider-Man was trying to pull the two bits of train together and stop it going over. But yeah, I remember really liking this film the first time I saw it, and then I see it again and I go, it's one of those ones that's like, it's quite hard to fault to a certain extent. It's so well done. It's so well acted. Robert Shaw pre-Jaws is so good.
Yeah. This was my first time, amazingly. It was just one it's been on the list for a while. I just never got around to it before now. But it's very solid, isn't it? So I'm not quite sure why he picked the English accent, but all right, go for it.
Because it's an American film and English people are evil. Evil, conniving, scheming individuals. So therefore, you've got to be English.
Couldn't it have done use his natural Irish accent?
No.
He used a fake British accent because he's Irish.
Yeah, he wants to throw suspicion onto the British and keep it away from the IRA.
Yes.
Obviously, he's learned from League of Gentlemen.
Pay back for the League of Gentlemen.
It all makes sense now. Yeah, it's just... I really like this film. I really do. The music is great. There's... One of the interesting things as well is that the main sort of inspector character that you have here, played by Walter Matthau, is Lieutenant Zachary Garber, is kind of an amalgamation of several characters that are in the novel. As I was reading the book today, this character kind of, I can't remember if he is present or just doesn't do as big a role. He's certainly not the person at the end that catches the final character that manages to get away. That's a completely different character and stuff like that. But you kind of, a bit like a Western almost, I think you need some individual kind of hero person to stand the ground and lead the resistance in a way. In the book, it's just kind of like 2 or 3 people kind of happen to come together, and he's just one of them. And I think it really works because one of the things I remembered from the first time is the final shot of him looking through the door. After he's kind of worked out what it is. And once again, the reveal of that, the way they so several of the spoilers, several of the criminals die getting away, and one of them manages to escape. And they kind of are starting to go through a list of names, and they turn up on this final guy's door, and a little slip accidentally. So he gives a German expression when he's. It's probably the German for kind of "bless you" or "at you." At the end, and he's heard that once when they're communicating over the radio, and he sneezes and gives that. And so right at the end, where this detective's leaving, the guy accidentally sneezed and said the same thing, and the detective's like, got you. Sorry, the lieutenant. He's not a detective at all. He just works at transport. That is not in the book. In the book, they literally turn up because they're going through the rounds, and he tries to make a run for it. And this character is not a incredibly courageous character, even though he's just kind of held people up at gunpoint and stole money. He's not kind of the all-action hero kind of, I can bluff my way out. So he's got like a little drop from sort of the fire escape to the ground to get away, and he's scared of the heights and he can't make it. So he gets caught like that. Rather than this giveaway. But this comes back to like we had in the League of Gentlemen, where a complete coincidence, something that you could not have prepared for, is the only reason that he gets caught right at the end. So everything kind of comes back and falls into these kind of classical roots of the kind of the crime thriller here. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of more to say about it.
Also, young Jerry Stiller and young Doris Roberts. Crazy. I think of them as sitcom, like old parents. So
I was very happy to see Jerry Stiller in this, and he steals his scenes. He's very funny in this. Just like just trying to get on with his job, and he just keeps getting kind of broken off by this odd day at work. Just
it's a really nice, tight, classic thriller, and is kind of regarded as one of the best. Again, it's been remade twice, so much so after the release of this, because the Pelham 1, 2, 3 is essentially it's Pelham 1 leaving it 23 minutes past the hour, or so it's 1 and then 2, 3, or 12, 3. I can't remember the exact thing, but as a result of this, they initially banned any trains leaving Pelham at that time, so they would never have a Pelham 1, 2, 3. It eventually got relaxed and then brought back in again in 1919, in the kind of the late 90s. So I think it might occasionally be a thing, but they try as much as they can not to have a Pelham 1, 2, 3 because of all the associations.
That's why they don't have the 310 to Yuma now. It's a real shame.
Yeah, not only that, again, this interview I saw with Hector Elizondo, a couple of days after this had come out, he goes, and it got very good reviews and things like that. He goes into a bank that he'd been going in like with his dad since he was a kid, that everyone knows him. Goes up and he's like, I can't remember what I was doing, but it was a new teller on the staff, and he goes to do the thing, and the woman kind of looks at him, looks at the thing, looks at him. You just wait there a second. Goes behind to speak to the manager. It's just like no. And the manager looks up. It's like, yeah, I know him. So it obviously got such a big effect that people are suddenly not thinking that this is a character. Suddenly it's. The character is in real life now trying to rob a bank after getting shot in the film. Spoilers.
Where have I seen this guy before?
Yeah, literally kind of doing, in North by Northwest, where Cary Grant goes up to get the ticket and the guy's just there going, looking at the newspaper. It's the equivalent of. I just like the fact that there is no Pelham 1, 2, 3 now as a result of this, because like everyone's now suspicious. Regardless of the fact that nobody remembers this film anymore now unless you know it from Reservoir Dogs,
And
kind of thing.
you can only commit a crime if it's on a train named after a movie. Otherwise,
Obviously.
you're safe.
Well, yeah, you'd never commit a crime at Pelham 124 now. It just wouldn't work, You get it. You go, oh no, can't do that. Jason Voorhees wakes up. It's Friday the 14th. Oh, I guess I'm not killing anyone today. There are so many cartoons of Jason like really sad looking at a calendar of Friday the 14th. It's amazing. Yeah, like the music's good. It's really tight. It's 1 hour 50, something like that. It's a really kind of good sort of snapshot, I think, of the city at this time of I mean, it's only kind of a couple of years later. It's not the same city, is it? But it almost feels like the New York equivalent of what Warriors is to the other. Is Warriors New York or is it LA? I can't remember.
Warriors is also New York, I think.
It makes me think of the book about cats that form societies and fight each other.
Oh, there was like a series of YA novels like that. I think I read the first.
The Warriors.
Yeah, I'm thinking that I only read the first one. Holy crap, that was a thing. But I mean, actually, Warriors. Looking at it was based on a novel from '65.
So they're escaping from the Bronx back to Coney Island. So they're going to cross quite a.
Yeah, so the two actually partner very well together. One's like the gang warfare, one's more of a crime. It's not a crime caper at this point. It's full almost like neo-noir. Without the Blade Runner aesthetic, it's still a kind of revisionist noir in a way. And it's just really well done. Like you watch it and you go, there may be little things that you're like not too keen on that, but overall it's like it's damn good. And I don't normally go to films and go, this is just really good, but I remember this from like 5 years ago and I'm still saying it's damn good. So I don't know what its kind of ratings is now.
Would you say it's better than Jaws: The Revenge?
I mean, I would almost say that Ava is better than Jaws: The Revenge, but that's not saying that much. Okay, maybe not that far.
If we ever do a television film episode, this guy could easily be on the list. Like over half his filmography is television film.
Yeah.
Yes, obviously. Okay, currently sitting on Rotten Tomatoes. I can see 98 critic score and 88 audience. Which, for a movie from 1974 to get 88% from an audience who are mainly like the kind of people that hate spam for Snow White, this is impressive.
I guess it also self-selects for people that would watch it.
Yeah, to get that kind of score and not be Godfather Part 2.
Or The Dark Knight. Also, obviously, The Dark Knight also with a kind of heist part with kind of masks that is inspired from another crime thriller from much earlier on by,
Yeah, I was very much thinking in the League of Gentlemen of the bank, the actual heist bit. Like, I bet Christopher Nolan's a fan of this.
Yeah, it's definitely almost. The Killing. When was The Killing? 55.
Yeah, I guess similar thing. Yeah, Killing's definitely. I mean, we know Nolan likes Kubrick, don't we? But...
I like the part in this movie where they fight about the tip. That was.
What, in Pelham?
Yeah.
In Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
10 minutes.
And then that other bit where Robert Shaw calls Steve Buscemi the F slur.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, Robert Shaw's death. I think Robert Shaw's character is actually interesting because there's a lot of stuff that they don't actually have in. Again, from the book, just because of time, and an awful lot of it is not told the dialogue. One thing that they do have in the film that isn't in the book are the Japanese people right at the start. Yes. And the reason they have that is to explain a lot of the stuff about trains that is actually internal to somebody's character. One of the
because the information she's delivering isn't to them; it's to the audience, really.
Yeah. It's to the audience. They do it in a kind of
And
rush
also,
hour sort of way.
the gag they're building up to, you can see a mile away, but it's still funny.
Yeah, you know it's there. But yeah, the that information is kind of internal thoughts. Kind of one of the drivers of the train is just thinking about him doing a job and all the things he knows about it, and this is how well he does it. But you can't have that in somebody's head, so they find a way to get somebody to deliver it. But again, there are things that are in people's heads that kind of don't make it translate onto the screen. A lot of the stuff is kind of the Mr. Blue as character, or Ryder as he's kind of known in the book. He's so much of a kind of sociopathic character in it. I mean, he's a kind of sociopath here, especially with his ending that he actually kills himself by kind of just very slightly putting his foot against the rail. But in the novel, it's interesting because it comes through here that he was a mercenary for hire, and it's like, why did you stop the market dried up? But it goes through a load of stuff in his childhood and gives you a quick recount of his past in the novel. And one of the things it kind of says is that sort of he says that somebody had told him that there must be something missing in his head, and he says that's probably wrong. There's probably multiple things missing, and it's not kind of like he likes kind of the violence. It's just that he finds he's very good at it. And so when the market dries up, it's almost like he's going to run this because it's all he knows, and he's almost going back home in a way. And he's successfully leading campaigns for all these different factions. Doesn't matter whose side he's on, as long as he's getting paid for it, essentially. So it makes it very interesting as a character that he is kind of detached. That there is something, and again, this is something that doesn't really come through. And you have like a snatcher of dialogue. He's talking with one of them that gets, I can't remember who it is he's talking to. I'm thinking again of the book. Might be Mr. Green.
Well, he spends most time with Mr. Green, doesn't he? Because he seems to trust him more than the other two.
Again, so I've read the book, and when the book doesn't use the code names, and the film mostly uses the code names, I'm having trouble kind of connecting the two. It's just really interesting how that character is kind of it's only a line or two. I think that does the job though, and that kind of line there's quite a few lines that are taken pretty much dialogue wise straight from the novel. As a really interesting character, and I think an underrated character, that there is kind of no he's sociopathic, but it's not evil. There's no kind of vendetta against like the government. There's nothing to do with that. It's just kind of all his kind of moral senses are gone. He just has none. Just we're going to rob and we're going to get the money because that's what we're going to do.
He's like a Hans Gruber in that kind of a way. He may have like some air of grandeur about it, but essentially he's just a good robber. You know, he's good at what he does. You know,
he's good at putting a team together and getting something done, and if it requires violence, he's going to do it. You know, and actually, Hector Elizondo was saying that kind of he played Mr. Grey as not somebody that was evil, but somebody that was just there to do a job.
And someone morally grey.
Possibly. Ooh. That's the thing you get from this, is that they will use violence if they have to, but I think it is very interesting that kind of just this is their line of work, and they will do it in a kind of job like going to work fashion, and will leave going to work, you know, this is how it's done, this is what it has to do. There is kind of, and I think in the film as well, but probably to a lesser extent than the book, there's all these people, you know, getting false information. Oh, he's actually working for this organization. It's actually this organization doing this. It's a political statement against it's just the right. It's all these lefties and stuff like that and all that. And the actual truth of the matter is it's none of these kind of political reasons. It's just let's rob a train and get the money because we're out of a job and we need money. So this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it, and we'll get away with it. And I actually, you know, normally that would make a character incredibly uninteresting, but I actually think, especially it makes Robert Shaw's character, and to a certain extent the rest of them, actually more interesting because it's a complete contrast to the norm. And I think that's on the second kind of go through and reading the book as well. That's what I'm taking away from this, that sometimes it's just the kind of almost the lack of motive in a way that suddenly speaks volumes. There is a kind of numbness that is the city has kind of worn these people down in a way, and so it really kind of reflects the time and place as a cultural artifact.
Some people just want to watch the world burn.
Yeah,
maybe.
Yes,
as long as they get a decent pay for it.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have anything else to say about villain team ups?
Actually, you know what? I'm going to ask you, Jacob. What were your thoughts on Pelham 1, 2, 3? Because you haven't really said much on this one.
I didn't watch it. I've expertly faked my way through this part of the episode.
Disgraceful. We will for the next episode. We will be giving you a quiz.
Nice.
We will be making sure, and it will be stuff that you definitely cannot find on flashcards on Spark Notes.
Well,
on Pelham 1, 2, 3.
Unfortunately, we're gonna have to wait an extra week for that, so I'll have plenty of study time. But until 2 weeks from now, where can people find you guys?
You can find me at SSP Thinks Film and at the Second Cut Pod Substack, where just today I've published my review of Thunderbolts, which was the sort of reason we instigated this episode, because it's about kind of bad guys or morally flexible guys teaming up to do something. So yeah, I would say people obviously go ahead and read my full review. I'm fairly positive on it. I'll say people have been disappointed by the last few Marvels. They maybe turn around on this. I'd say it's definitely at least a more interesting film as goes to some different places to what the MCU's gone in over the last half decade or so. So yeah,
Mars.
well worth checking out.
No, not gone to Mars yet, so that's still technically
true.
I am K Judgmental in the various places. Hopefully you don't find me. If you do, I am there. I don't think I've had anything up in the past week, but I am going to be seeing Final Destination Bloodlines because there is a I think it's like a wide release next week, but Cineworld near me are doing a double bill with the original and Bloodlines tomorrow, so I'm going to see that tomorrow, and I will hopefully put a ranking of all the Final Destinations together, because I love Final Destination. It's stupid and the first one's so good.
Nice.
I've still got to finish it. I've still got to see the previous two. I've seen 1 to 3, but I've not seen 4 and 5.
4 is pointless. 5 does at least an interesting thing right at the end. Yeah, and I should do a shout out just in case anybody is around. On the absolute off chance, I will be in Derby in the UK from next Thursday to next Sunday at a 4-day Dracula conference, where I will be giving a paper on the Saturday. So just thought I'd plug my own stuff there. Actual academia attempted.
Yeah. Vampire conferences, they sound like they'd be better at night, but maybe worse.
Hopefully it won't suck.
Oh God. You can find me at Jacob Film Guy, and one other thing. I mean, it's well past now, but we put together a list of all of the Star Wars things we read at the film magazine. Wrote at the film magazine, so you could read those until 2030.
We're teaching him better English slowly.
Yes. Yep. No.
Me fail English? That's impossible.
Let's see. And technically, I did not write that, but I wrote a bunch of the articles in it. So
you wrote most of the articles.
The vast majority. Sam, you only wrote 2 Star Wars articles at the film magazine?
I only wrote 1.
Well, I'm not shocked by that, Kieran. You wrote a lot of...
Most of the Star Wars movies came out, like, recently, so...
Yeah. Would we put together the monster movie, like, one, you'll have, 10, 15.
No, slasher movies, that's what I meant.
Yes,
anyway,
slasher.
Let's get off the airwaves.
Yes, that's it. We're done. We don't have merch, so don't buy it. Bye.
Yet.
Pope's a man.